was the 90s, he would be all there. It's me, my Scotch and I, 'cause OB is the guy. OB is the guy.
Hey, Obi.
Good evening and welcome to Me, My Scotch and I. I am Obi Spencer and we are on the Spanglish Sports World Network, Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app from either the iOS or Android App Store. The app is free. Please rate it. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. The show is currently broadcast on 4 continents in over 35 countries. Those of you that have been our fans for a while know that I've lost some weight. One of the things I'm hoping to do now that I'm healthier is hike the Appalachian Trail. Here to talk about the adventure life and his experiences is Ferrell Beleshko. Ferrell, thank you for joining us today at the last minute. But given my desire to increase my outdoor adventures, I am doubly lucky to have you. How did you find yourself being drawn to nature and the adventure life?
Well, growing up in Alberta, Canada, and literally having the Rocky Mountains, the Canadian Rocky Mountains, right at my back door, it's always drawn me. Always enjoyed going as a kid to Banff National Park, to Kananaskis, to Jasper. We've got a lot of open space here, so the outdoors has always appealed to me. And as I got older with some friends and that, we would go out and we'd hike, and sometimes we learned the hard way. It just really appealed to me. I've always had a call to the wild.
Excellent. And you are the co-founder of the Wild Canadian Rocky Mountain Hikers. What is the organization? What's your role with them now? Has it changed since you've become the co-founder? What is that whole thing? So
the Wild Canadian Rocky Mountain Hikers, there's 3 of us. There's Mark Burden, Jafar Aziz, and myself, Ferrell Beleshko. What had happened is that about 3 years ago, we were all doing various aspects of hiking and mountaineering and adventure life and that. And there's all these different groups out on Facebook and so forth. And the thing we found frustrating is that most of these groups were basically posting the look at me stuff, like the Instagram posts, up on the top of the mountain. There's no information. Some of these posts, sure that some of these people got there safely and that, but there's nothing about warning about animals, the right practices, the dangers of going on that hike and never having done something like that before. That some of that isn't a hike, it's actually technically mountaineering. So, we got talking and we realized that, our frustrations and what we would see and just some of the stuff that just from a lifestyle and best practice perspective frustrating us, we decided we needed to do something. And so Jafar had a group that was sort of doing some stuff, and we just realized, we need to take that group in Facebook, and he had about 1,000 people in there. We decided it's time to do something right. So we renamed it to Wild Canadian Rocky Mountain Hikers because the bulk of the group was doing stuff in the Canadian Rockies. And it was all about best practices, content that's around education, things about gear, stuff about bear spray, giving the right information between what is technically crampons, which a lot of people call micro spikes, these crampons, which you need these if you're going to go on ice or snow. These are real mountaineering tools. Just the language like that can really be confusing for some people. And so that's how it was born. And it's become more than a group now. We're in the beginning stages of building a brand and building an educational platform that in the coming month or two, we'll have the beginning stages of that online.
That is awesome. And that takes me right to some of the questions I have for you. I was fortunate enough to be both a Boy Scout growing up, and then I continued to do some camping, mostly overnights with my buddies well into my 20s. But someone who's an adult and who has no real experience, where do they begin going into the adventure, to live that outdoor adventure lifestyle?
So that's the problem. There's these scattered spaces. Like the Sierra Club is one to go to, but the problem with the Sierra Club is it's not necessarily completely visible to everybody. So, for example, if you had no idea about the hiking space, You wouldn't know where to go. One area, like you were talking about the Appalachian Trail. Well, the Appalachian Trail is a different experience and different best practices than if you're going to go and start hiking mountains here in the Canadian Rockies or the Colorado Rockies. There's different things to learn. So where to go? Well, first place a lot of people go is they go on Google. However, a lot of that ends up being Instagram, Facebook stuff. And, if you don't know, you just don't know. And you start getting information that may not be accurate. So that's really why we started the Wild Canadian Rocky Mountain Hikers, is that we felt there needed to be a better space, better education. And there are people who are providing good education out there, but again, it's quite a bit of a hit and miss. So the objective of what we're doing is to create that space that becomes predominantly there and people know about it. And it'll expand outside of just being Canada. I mean, we've got members from all over the world. We've got people from Nepal, people who have done Everest. So it's really a matter of providing education. So that's the issue, is where do you go? And it's hit and miss. Like from your own experience, I mean, you had some stuff from Boy Scouts.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, from Boy Scouts, I learned how to hike. I learned how to overnight camp, and I learned how in an emergency to stay alive,
right?
In a God forbid situation. What I didn't really learn how to do, and this kind of takes me to my next question for you, is I didn't learn how to do things like mountaineering, and I mean I did some orienteering, but that was in the days when there was actually compasses and not cell phones and GPSs and things like that.
Yeah.
And so it was such a different world in terms of then, even when I left Boy Scouts, I was hanging out with my buddies, right? We packed for an overnight, and that was one simple trip, one tent between, for every two people. You could carry the weight. If you're doing 5 miles, that's a long hike. And being honest, we were in our 20s. It meant we're bringing a case of beer with us or something. So it wasn't like we were going places where we were worried about the bears getting our food the next morning, because we were probably coming right out. So it was that level of stuff. And I knew from Boy Scouts that, hey, on the other hand, if you're going to go in and you're going to spend 2 days, you need to put your food high. You need to protect your water supply. So there was that extra level that I knew, as did most of the guys I was with. But Boy Scouts was the place to begin. What we didn't know was, and even now, it's sort of the differences in a lot of these terms and the equipment that I know you have on your desk, and love to have you share some between hiking, mountaineering, camping. What do these terms really mean, and how do they separate themselves? Because, like you said, the Appalachian Trail, it's hilly, but it's not mountainous, versus the Rocky Mountains, which I've driven a car through there, and that was different enough than driving through where I live.
Yeah, like the Appalachian Trail, even the kind of hiking boots you're going to have are going to be different than what you would use in the Rocky Mountains right through North America, let alone what's in Canada and the United States. It's all this information is important. It takes a good community of experts that are coming from all these different directions to share their knowledge, and not just blind knowledge, but knowledge that comes from both experience and training. Like I was talking with Mark and Jafar on Sunday, we got to make sure that, and this is something that we're actively pursuing, making sure that the people who are leading these spaces have taken guide courses, have taken avalanche safety training, have taken wilderness survival, have taken desert training, things like that, so that when they start talking about these different spaces, they know what they're talking about and they're giving the right information. Or if they see somebody talking about it, they can say, no, actually, if you want to consider this would be better. Why don't you just throw some questions at me, and I can either show you some gear, or we can just go through a scenario.
Well, let's start with the basics. What's the difference between hiking and mountaineering? Because that is the basic question I want to get covered first.
All right. So hiking is literally, in its very fundamental form, is walking for a distance in nature. Now, if you live in New York City and you walk from one end of Manhattan Island to the other, that's a form of hiking, but you call it walking, but it's an urban hike. So when you're out in the wild, if you're walking like the Appalachian Trail, if you're walking, in Wyoming or Montana, or you're walking in the Canadian Shield in Ontario or Quebec, or in the Rockies here, if you're not having to use any gear that is like this, so this is an ice axe, this is a mountaineering tool, you're just hiking. Now, and there are things that you do need for hiking, and depending on conditions and so forth, and there are different tiers of hiking, and there are graduating steps from hiking to mountaineering. But yeah, literally just taking a mountain or say a hiking boot that's got some tread like this, got good ankle support for the most part. You can get hiking running shoes, but you know there's the debate about having support around the ankle being better than not having the support. Mountaineering boots are much more involved. They've got a much more rigid structure. They're designed to actually protect the foot more and for conditions in terms of weather and snow and ice and whatever, and rain for that matter. But yeah, just a straight up hike. You are literally taking a day pack. Like I like to use just a basic, $50 tactical pack off of Amazon because I can put about 45 liters in here. And with the ribbing in that, I can be creative with I put a hang off of it and so forth. You can get really good packs for very inexpensive or very expensive from, I think it's RNI or RMI in the States. Up here, we call it in Canada, we call it a version of that, we call MEC, Mountain Equipment Co-op. There are other Adventure Life stores, so you can get Osprey and all sorts of other types of kits and packs where you put your food in, your basic survival stuff, first aid kit, your water, things like that. And having a hydration pack in there is usually a good thing. And that's hiking. But when you get into mountaineering, that's where you start doing things like aspects of scrambling, where you're getting into a grade, where there's rocks and debris and boulders, and you're having to go up those grades and traverse and work your way through that debris, through the boulders. And there's varying degrees of that. And then you get to cliff faces or spaces that are no longer an aspect of hiking and walking. You're actually having to do you're having to do climbing in some respect, 3 points of contact at all times. And then you get into straight up mountaineering where you're having to use ropes and harnesses, ice axes. That's your formal mountaineering. And you're prepared to survive on the mountain, that you're going to be potentially stuck there for 2 or 3 or 4 days, get caught in a major snowstorm, because if you're at altitude, you could be in the middle of summer and still get snow at 15, 20,000 feet or more.
Wow. Yes. So it sounds like hiking you can do on a whim. Mountaineering, you better be prepared for.
Yeah, even hiking, you got to be prepared too. But in its basic form, you can do hiking on a whim. The one thing you want to be mindful of when you're hiking is where you're hiking. What kind of predators are there? How much water are you taking with you? Do you have first aid kit with you? It's always good to have, such as bear spray. So bear spray is useful not just for bears, but for cougars, wolves, most of those predators. Different techniques for the different scenarios. But yeah, it also depends on the region you're in. Like if you're going through the Appalachian Trail, you're probably not going to see too many wolves. I don't think there are any wolves there, but you might see a few bears. You might see the odd cougar. I'm actually not familiar with the nature of the predators along the trail. So it really just comes down to understanding the space that you're going to be in and how long you're potentially going to be there for. Another tool that was useful for a lot of people is the hiking pole. Now, a collapsing pole, there are people who say that they don't need these, it's a waste of time and so forth. They actually are very good. It's been proven scientifically that the energy used by the hands and the arms while hiking reduces the amount of energy and really creates a longer form of stamina out of the muscles in your legs. Plus, also, you can get, I forget what the term is, but your arms can actually get to a point which is similar to, it's not the bends, but you can basically have a sort of an atrophy. I can't even pronounce the word. But with the poles, what you're doing is you're actually keeping the muscles active as well as for balance and so forth. So if you're just on a flat space, it's more about keeping the arms active and keeping the muscles active within your arms. If you're in a hilly space or in more of a mountain space, such as the Rockies, these can become quite useful both for summer and winter, especially when it comes to balance and safety.
Okay. So we're talking a lot about the gear. I appreciate props, love props, and sort of the doing it. Your favorite hikes that you've been on, have they been about the hike itself, the sort of destination, or is it just another one of these great activities that's about the people you're with that makes that hike, that mountain, that adventure great?
You know, it's a bit of everything. It depends on the mindset. Like there are days where I've gone and done a solo hike, and it's all been about the relationship with the mountain. I got a friend by the name of Ali Baba Zitzer. He said this best once. He said that for him, it truly is about the temple of the mountain. It's about the relationship with the mountain. That when you're on the mountain, you're having a conversation. And if you've done that hike many times, that conversation is always changing because it's such a vast space and there's always different things going on. So there is that spiritual component of hiking. And it's in a way, and I've been told this many times, it's a form of meditation because you're constantly breathing, you're moving, your mind space is becoming focused on the task at hand and where you're going and the environment that you're around. You lose the thought of the world that you left back in the city, and you're becoming immersed in the space of the wild. The relationship with the people that you're meeting along the trail or you're hiking with, absolutely. I've made friends from all over the world, people that I've met just in passing, people who were wanting to go on a hike and connected on a Facebook group or something like that. So there's the benefit of both areas, both aspects of it. And also the challenge. In some cases where like dealing in a mountain hike and getting exposure, not in terms of temperature, but you can have that too. Exposure in terms of a cliff face, or maybe you got a 1,000-foot drop, 3 feet from you. Gaining that confidence and that belief in yourself that you're in complete control. It's said you're not going to fall off that cliff unless you choose to fall off that cliff. That's part of the experience as well. And so it's kind of multifaceted. It's a few different things, really. Depends on where your headspace is in the moment.
Speaking of that sort of cliff, and you did kind of mention it earlier, what are some that, you learned some things the hard way? What are some of the more harrowing experiences you have had out there? It sounds like more likely mountaineering than hiking.
Fortunately, I haven't had any life-threatening situations for me personally because I think for me, and God willing and the whole bit, I've taken the idea of slow is fast. That's really borrowed from the military and in the NATO sphere and probably all militaries in the world, where you don't rush through it. You take your time. You follow the procedures and your best practices, and you will get through it, and you'll come through alive. So that slow is fast mindset allows for, if you suddenly something doesn't feel right, you stop. You get your perspective. You see what's going on. If you need to stop and pull back, great. That's fine. The ego has no place when you're out there. And when you're talking about mountains, you don't get summit happy. If you're just I got to get to the summit, you can lose focus and you can create some very serious problems for yourself. So the most interesting experiences I've had, like last year, the pandemic's done a lot of interesting stuff for a lot of us in terms of our spirituality, our getting, learning ourselves and getting used to being yourself again and not being stuck watching TV, or when you found the end of Netflix, you got bored and you wanted to find something to do. I started doing a lot more hiking, and I'll call it pseudo mountaineering because I wasn't doing anything with ropes and doing climbing where I'm bolted into the mountain. But I was doing a lot of treks, and I reached a point where I needed a bit of a Canadian walkabout. I told Mark and Jafar I'm taking off, some friends as well. Grabbed all my gear, threw it in my vehicle, drove from Calgary here and went west. I went to Vancouver Island, and there's some beautiful hiking out there on the BC coast and the west coast of the United States and right through to Northern California. I mean, some of the most beautiful spaces in the world. And so going along the Juan de Fuca Trail from Victoria, BC, up to what's called Sombrio Beach and past that. And about 3 miles, roughly 4 or 5 kilometers north of Sombreros Beach along the Pacific coast of the Juan de Fuca Trail, where it becomes the Pacific Coast. I met a guy that was doing some hiking and stuff, and he's actually originally from Victoria there. And we're just going to hang out and hike some more. And we just kept going. And about 100 meters up from where we met, and we were just talking a bit, we saw this black figure. And it turns out it was a black bear. So, you don't get aggressive. You don't push the bear. You don't yell at the bear. You respect the bear's space. And to keep the story relatively short, we just kind of waited. And I looked at this guy. His name was Mark. And I just said, you know what? It's like 20 minutes have gone by. I'm just going to see what the bear's intention is. So I walked up about 25 meters, and we'll call it maybe 50 feet or something like that. And I just slowly wanted to see what the bear would do. And the bear looked back, it stopped digging into the beach, into the rocks and that, getting its crabs and clams and all that, and just stared at me. And I took one step forward, turned, it bolted into the bush. This would be to the east, up into the island. Okay, we thought, great, the bear is gone, but we were very careful, very mindful. We walked up to where the bear went in, and we were just kind of worried the bear would come out. We never saw the bear there. So we figured along there we'd find a place to camp in that. And the space, I started looking at the way the water and the tide would come in, and I thought, this is a bad idea. You could see the way the rocks are rippled, and that storm comes in, we're done. So Mark's setting up his tent now, and I said, look, I'm going to go around this bend, this outlet, or this cropping of rock that's there, and there's this little waterfall of fresh water coming down. And so I went through this rock cropping, and the ocean's kind of hitting the beach a bit and hitting the rocks there, and went through this waterfall. And it was really good water, by the way. I drank some. Had to get down in some water and swam about 20 feet and climbed up these rocks, went around this outcropping, this point, and I saw this massive cove. It was perfect. The rocks were, like the beach was up probably about 50 feet higher than on the other side. And there was all this driftwood. We could build a cabin, the whole bit. I mean, it was perfect. And if there was a storm that came in, we had an escape route up the embankment. So I came back, got Mark, told him what I found, went and set up camp. And I decided to go for a walk a little bit later just to sort of check out the space to see what the tide would be like where we were before. And I saw the black bear again back out on that beach. And the bear was out there. We weren't really interacting too much, but it was a bit of a moment. And then the next morning after we'd had our dinner and we're cooking fire and all that, and we're just enjoying the sunset, and it's beautiful out there. I get up. I'm in my tent. I get up, I wake up, and I look out the tent, and I see this beautiful sunrise coming out over the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State. All these clouds are out there, and they were sort of rippled going out to the Pacific, and all this burnt orange and blues and purples and green coming off the clouds from the sunrise. It was just iconic. I had to take a picture. I had to see this. So I'm wearing a white t-shirt and my boxers. I grab my phone as my camera. I put my shoes on, and I go out. I go out to where the tide had gone out maybe 100 meters, so there was a lot more land there. And where that outcropping of rock was, it would have been here if the water was there. So the water would have been here. Yeah. And so I'm out there. I'm at this very little point, and I'm just looking out, and I'm enjoying this. I'm taking pictures, and I'm looking out to the Pacific and all that. I'm just in awe of the art of nature. And I get this notion, this thought, look left. And I looked left, and right then and there, I don't have any bear spray with me. I got nothing. There's the bear. The black bear is maybe 20 feet and has the high ground. There's nothing I could do. If the bear wanted to jump me, all the bear had to do was jump. I just was like, nothing I could do, because the bear just had popped up and was looking at me. And in that bit of a split second, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't have bear spray. I've got nothing. There's no way I'm going to wrestle this thing. I had no fear. It was weird. I was just in a surreal position in terms of my energy and my emotions and so forth. I was just calm. And I just looked at the bear, and I said, "Hey, bear." And the bear tilted its head It literally tilted its head like I was talking to a dog and said bacon. So yeah, it just was. It was such a cool, super cool moment, but it wasn't scary. And it's like we were having this connection and we're communicating that, I'm safe, you're safe, I'm just here, I'm not moving into your home, the whole bit. And the bear looked up at this embankment, this cliff beside us, and he looked at me. I'm assuming I'm saying he or she. And then the bear just sort of went like this, turned and went straight up that embankment. And the bear hung around a little bit and had another experience in the morning when the bear had come by our campfire, obviously smelling some of the food that we had maybe fallen on the fire and so forth, and was digging in it. And I just wasn't going to get out and look because I knew it was the bear. And I waited for about 10 or 15 minutes after I didn't hear any more noise. And I opened up the tent and I poked my head out. Didn't see anything in front to the left, but I looked to the right and I see the bear, probably 50 feet away, walking away. And the bear just stops, turns, looks at me, and then just turns and keeps going. It was almost like a moment. It's like, okay, see ya. That was chill. So, that was probably one of the most surreal moments that I've had with a predator, with a bear. I'd say the scariest moment that I've ever had was with a cougar. I had last year 7 encounters with grizzlies, black bears, and all of them were super safe and super cool. You just have to understand how to interact with the animal, how to give it its respect. Don't stare it in the eye. Don't be yelling at it. The bear is the king. So you bow to the bear and you back off. But a cougar, you have no idea how many times you can be watched by a cougar. You just don't know until the cougar presents itself. And the scariest event that I ever had was about 5 years ago. Here in the Canadian Rockies, I went fishing and a hike with a buddy. And he's Bulgarian, so when he gets really freaked out and upset, everything's in Bulgarian. I don't understand what he's talking about, but it's all good. But I'm out fishing. He's on the other side of the lake, and he's yelling at me, and he's telling me to look up, look up, look up. And I've got all this entire field of a mountain that had broken down behind where I was, and all this boulder field. 50 feet above me was this cougar sitting like a house cat, wagging its tail. And so, I look up and I'm wearing a red coat and I'm looking at this cougar, and the cougar is just kind of, it's ready. You can see it's moving its butt a bit. It was thinking about it. And I had this bag of fish and I grabbed the bag of fish. I don't even know why. I was thinking I just grabbed it, whipped it up at the cougar. And it probably went 20, 25 feet. Cougar bounced down the rocks a bit, went straight to the bag of fish, and I was backing off. And I kept my eyes on the cougar the whole time, kept my size as big as I could, and maybe 70 feet from the cougar. At that point, I kind of turned and started to walk, but keeping my eye, and to the point I didn't see the cougar anymore. That was probably the scariest situation I've had, simply because you don't see a cougar until it wants you to see it, and it's thinking about eating you or attacking you.
Oof. Oof.
Yeah.
That is harrowing. I have, and because it's such a different type of animal, it's a completely different experience. But we have, where I live, the deer like to frequent. And I have a deer friend, like you have the bear. The deer sees me at this point, comes out my door. It never gets close. It's not asking me for food. He just looks in the woods. Oh, it's you again. So now that's a completely different animal than the bear. So I kind of understand that when the animal looks at you and goes, "Hey, how are you? I'm here. You stay there."
But it's almost that same kind of connection, though. You're having that exchange with the animal. You guys can feel each other's intent.
Yeah, and that is exactly the part where I was what I was saying. That exact sort of thing. At this point, the deer's like, "Oh, it's him."
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just you.
It's just you. I'm going to sit here eating your plants and you're going to be okay with it, right? Yeah, you got it. Keep eating them.
Yeah.
You've told some great stories, and hopefully we're going to get some more. I know those folks who follow me on Twitter and IG, I promised you all the fashion playbook was coming back. But after I put it together, examined what we were doing, knew we had this guest coming on, not the original one, I scratched that idea. And we're going to go with the game called Rocky Mountain High. I grabbed some pictures of some mountains I believe are in the Canadian mountains.
All right, this will be good.
And hopefully you'll be able to identify them and maybe give us a story or two about them. But if you don't get them right, it's okay. Especially, but if you got the stories, that would be great, because the ones you've told so far with the bear and the cougar have been fantastic. So if Rebecca can pull up our first picture,
Okay.
We'll start there.
Hang on. That looks like Castle Mountain, but that might not be. Or, well, hang on.
Let's see if you got that one right. Let's see if your gut instinct was correct.
Okay. Is it Castle?
We're going to find out in a second.
Okay.
Yes, it is Castle Mountain.
Nice.
Very good.
I've done that mountain. It was a 19-hour trek, 2 peaks, 38 kilometers. So that's roughly like 23 miles or something, or 24 miles. And in the back bowl, there is no water. You may as well be in a desert, unless you're in the wintertime.
And that's what you were talking about before, where you have to be prepped for deserts. When you're talking to trainers, have they gone through the desert training, even though you're in the middle of Canada?
Well, yeah. So yeah, exactly. I mean, the desert training doesn't necessarily entirely apply, but having understanding of how to utilize your resources and your body, your water, and so forth. When you're in spaces like that and you're at altitude, you may as well be in a desert. If you don't have direct access to water and you use up all your H2O, that can be a problem eventually.
I imagine so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's look at our next one.
Okay.
Doing good so far.
That is the Three Sisters.
Let's take a look. Absolutely.
Right out of Canmore. Yeah. So 2 of those mountains you can hike. The front one, you've got to be able to climb it.
Okay.
That's full-on mountaineering. I mean, it's technically mountaineering for those 3 peaks, but that first one on the front, you absolutely have to be able to climb.
Gotcha. So three points of contact at all time, ropes and such to get up to the first
gear and harnessing and yeah, exactly, and clips and the whole bit.
Okay. This is a beautiful one. Let's see what we have next.
All right.
The top's cut off a little bit. I didn't realize.
Yeah, I know that's Mount Yanumska. Yanumska, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Mount Yanumska is a beautiful mountain, and that's scree. You see all those lines there, right in the center?
Yes.
Most of that is man-made. That's people skiing down the rock in the summertime. Like they're running through the rock, but if you run fast enough, you could literally surf through that rock. And I've done that. Literally taken a pole and just went to speed, and I literally had my legs forward, and I'm just surfing down it.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow,
you can tumble,
okay.
but there's so much debris there, and the rocks are like maybe a fistful size that when you tumble, it's like you're falling in a bed where you're in sand and so forth. It's dusty, but it's fun. Now, going on Mount Yanumska on the backside, there's actually a section along a cliff where you've got to go along a cliff holding onto chains. And, a lot of people find that really, really freaky. But that's actually not the dangerous part of the mountain. It's what comes after the chains. That's the challenge, because you've got all these spaces that have got really sharp decline or inclines and declines and all that. And you got loose debris rock and the whole bit. But yeah, that's Mount Yanumska, and that's at the eastern face of the Canadian Rockies along Highway 1.
All right. You've been excellent at this game so far. Remember, for those of us watching, Me, My, Scotch, and I can be found on TikTok at me_my_Scotch_and_I. And of course, we're on YouTube, Me, My, Scotch, and I. You get full episodes, plus you get playlists of just our games and our drink up segments, which we will get to later. Let's see which mountain we have next.
All right. Okay. That one's a little more tricky. I'm wanting to think that's a Mount Assiniboine, but maybe not.
Let's take a
I'm
look.
thinking Assiniboine, but I'm probably wrong.
Okay, let's see what we got here.
No, Edith Cavell.
Yes,
Okay.
I don't usually celebrate when we fool our guests, but you've been so amazing. I can't believe it.
Yeah, Edith Cavell. Okay, all right. Yeah, you fooled me. Nice.
Yes. So this one is described as guess we're gonna move on to the next one before I have anything to say about it, which is fine. What do we have here?
That's not Temple. Unless it's an angle I haven't seen of it. That's not Robson. You know what? I don't know what mountain that is.
It is. Let's see what the next one is. The tallest mountain in the Canadian Rockies. It was.
Oh, it is Robson. I'm looking at
Yes.
an angle I'm not used to seeing. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess I had two pictures of it. And I'm looking at the picture I have for my notes. I'm going, oh yeah, that is that because it's got that little double peak that's all the V. But when you got it wrong, like you probably recognize it's this slightly different picture.
Yeah, I see it from a different angle where I think there's a lake or something in front of it. But yeah, no, you fooled me.
When I was exploring these pictures, there was the Robson State Park, and that was a gorgeous lake that I saw when I was seeing it.
Yeah. No, it's that's definitely a full-on mountaineering mountain, and there's a lot of people that try to do it and they just can't. They turn back. And it's not that it's not doable. It's just that they're being tested with their skills.
All right, let's see the last one that we have here.
Okay. Oh, I'm totally going to get this one wrong. For some reason I'm thinking Lougheed.
Okay,
backside.
What if I told you this is the most difficult mountain to climb?
Oh, Logan.
Okay, let's see what we got here.
Mount All right. All right, you got me. See, that's the mountaineering side of me that needs more experience doing the climbs.
So this one, when I looked up, it said it was the most difficult of the 11,000ers from a climber's point of view.
Yeah, I would agree. Just even looking at that one angle of the picture, that would be a very tough ascent. You definitely got to do some serious climbing.
Okay. You were amazing at this game. Don't like I said, it's not. I don't want it to be easy. I like when you had to think and be like, "Is that yes? It is," but I wasn't trying to fool you.
No. You know, it's just like the thing is, if you haven't been up that mountain a whole bunch of times, you don't necessarily know all the angles and whatnot.
Right. So. Absolutely. If it's not the picture that's in your head, it's not the one that you see broadcast everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't even you could take the wrong angle and you wouldn't recognize anything for that matter. Yeah. Please check out SpanishSportsWorld.com for all the news and programming. Spanish Sports World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it. Most importantly, live it. Spanish Sports World. Go on.
I was just going to say for anybody that wants to follow and be a part of the Wild Canadian Rocky Mountain Hikers, just go into Facebook, type in Wild Canadian Rocky Mountain Hikers, and you'll find the group and you just join. And there's no bad questions. And you'll see pictures like that. You'll see people that are doing a lot of these different ascents. And anybody who wants information that wants to learn, that's the perfect space to do it because we're sharing this stuff all the time. And anybody asks a question, it gets answered properly. And it's a safe space.
Excellent. Before we get to our drink up,
all right.
You consider yourself a multipreneur. It took me a while to figure out what that word was when you had it there. It's like, oh, bing, bing, bing. So tell us a little bit about some of the other things you're doing in your life besides when you're not climbing mountains.
So an entrepreneur is somebody who is starting their own business and developing it and so forth. A multipreneur is somebody who has multiple ventures and businesses and gets into different things, sets things up where the business isn't a job, but sets it up so that people can start running the business, and then the entrepreneur can go on to the next one. So for the last couple of decades, I've had Terra Software, which is a software development company doing really all sorts of stuff in a wide variety of spaces. Done stuff with military contractors, done stuff with provinces and states, different businesses, oil and gas, engineering, construction, finance, cake companies, everything. There's been just all sorts of things that the business has been involved with. And then I do a lot of charity work, and some of that, a lot of it's with Make-A-Wish, and I do rappels and rappelling off the side of buildings and help run rappel events so that they can raise money to pay for wishes. And the average wish costs roughly about $10,000 US and Canadian, depending on where it's going. So we'll usually base it on $10,000 US dollars. And so, it takes a lot of effort to raise money to just grant one wish for a child. And one of the ways that they do it is through Rope for Hope, and where we'll set up a rappelling event on the top of a building, and people will raise $1,500 to $2,000 for the right, or more, for the right to rappel off the side of the building. And of course, we teach them the whole bit. And the events are a lot of fun, and they're very successful. But I got to meet some really interesting people in the process. I got to meet people who do building maintenance and all that on the side, men and women. I got to meet some former Alphabet soldiers who have done some very wild, amazing things and kept our society from imploding. And in the course of that, I got to know some guys doing a lot of stuff in TV and film, and they started teasing me that if I wanted to continue doing rappels with them and hang out and maybe do a few things with them on a TV or film set once in a while, I have to get my SPRAD, which is Society of Professional Rope Access Technicians. So I've got my level 1 back in June of 2020. When there was a window during the pandemic to go to Toronto, where these guys, Jason McLaughlin and so forth, are, and that was 8 days of pain, but well worth it. I mean, if you ever want to get in shape, go do a rope course. You're just using your body constantly. And just recently took on a position with Omen Media, which is a music media company. Taken on the CTO position, which is Chief Technical Officer, and I've been brought in to help develop a platform for musicians and producers and audio and sound engineers and so forth, and just create this entire environment for them so that they really ultimately have better control of the product they put out and the rights to that music and so forth. And we'll see how it all evolves, but it's interesting space. And I got a few other business partners, the Wild Canadian being with Mark and Jafar. And then there's a guy by the name of Jeff Parsons who does a lot of cybersecurity, cyber defense. And we've been getting involved with a lot of stuff for app development and vertical solutions when the opportunity arises. So that's the story of my last sort of decade here of being a multipreneur. Excellent.
I just want to go back and say we always want to give that extra shout out to charity work. So thank you for that. And Make-A-Wish is, I have a few folks who are really heavily involved with that, and they always have smiles on their faces when they finally pull something off. And it so-and-so agreed, and we got to bring the kid, and it's always a good time. And I love that organization.
Yeah. There's so many amazing people that get involved. I mean, of course, you get movie stars like Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson and all these other people that do these amazing things. And a lot of the time, you don't even know they've done it. They don't necessarily put it out there. That's not their motive. But sometimes it gets out there, and sometimes they use their clout in order to raise more money for the organization. But there are so many people that do so many wonderful things for that charity and charities at large. And, that's the people that really make the difference, is everybody that takes their personal time, takes it out of their time with family, time with work and all that to just make that difference for a child or whatever the cause is.
Absolutely. So we're going to take that seed and go right into having a drink for those folks.
All right.
So we have a couple of drinks here, both Canadian. We're going to start with the Crown Royale.
All right.
You can tell somebody saw Pulp Fiction back in his youth because he can't say the word royal properly. He can only say royale. Ooh.
So I got a little story here. I've got a Ukrainian glass brought from Ukraine. My grandfather came over back in like 1914, and these glasses are from back then, where it's been in the family. So, and it was all about Scotch. And my grandfather was a bartender his entire professional life.
The great thing about that glass is it's not in my family because we would break it. That's how my family See, this is a beautiful color. Red, almost amber.
Yeah, definitely.
Take a sniff.
Mm-hmm.
What do you smell there? Anything interesting?
There's a bit of a sweet smell. I smell a bit of the I want to say almost an oak kind of smell to it, a little bit.
I do smell a little woody, but a lot of sweet. A lot of sweet.
A lot of sweet. Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's got a touch of a bite, but then it smooths out, and then it's just like nice and even.
I would agree. I was expecting it to be sweeter based on the smell, but it wasn't. Kind of doughy, cakey, maybe feeling. Like you said, a bite and then a light vanilla flavoring. I felt that finish it off.
Yeah. There's some vanilla for sure, and a bit of heat coming from it too. Like the alcohol definitely brings some heat.
Yes, that is not an alcohol light whiskey at all.
No.
So let's switch it up in these last 3 or 4 minutes, and let's try the JP Weiser's 18-year-old, a little more mature, supposedly. We'll see if it holds up to that.
Okay.
A lighter color.
Yeah,
sure.
It's definitely lighter, for sure. I don't smell as much of the wood.
No. Butterscotch, almost. Sweet, but not as sweet.
Yeah, a little bit something like that, yeah.
All right.
It's definitely got a bit different aroma. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot smoother.
A heck of a lot. What was that?
It flows better. There isn't that same bite that you get from the Crown Royal or Royale, but it's a cleaner, smoother drink for sure.
Altogether, just it's not less flavorful. It's just lighter all around. Less sweet on the smell, less sweet on the taste, but still sweet. Maybe a little nutty. You can actually taste more wood in there than the one that smelled woodier. But I think the key here is the finish. Although it's not like drinking water. You know there's alcohol in it. It doesn't burn you on the way down. This is what you want to.
The Crown does a bit of that burn. This doesn't. No, the Weiser, the JP Weiser, the 18-year-old doesn't do that. No. But I definitely have more of the vanilla with that nutty going on. Mm-hmm. The alcohol doesn't overpower it, where with the Crown Royal it does.
Exactly. This is the one when I get off air I'm going to finish. That's for sure. So in our last 2 minutes, I know one of the things that you're involved in that's new out there, and I know it's not a lot of time to talk about it, is Clubhouse. So why don't you give us a quick 1 minute synopsis of that, what you're doing there and what you're looking to gain from Clubhouse.
So Clubhouse is an audio space, social space. It's a networking space. It's social media without all the pre-programmed look at me, best version of yourself, fake. This is like, it's take away the cameras, take away the video, and it's Clubhouse. It's the audio. We're on stage. We're talking to each other. There are people in the audience listening. whoever wants to come up on stage can. Conversations are real, they're genuine, and the amount of networking and connection that goes on is phenomenal. I've gained more business connections and opportunities and signed more business deals in the last 4 months. And I've seen people get recording contracts, get signed on to movies and things like that in the last 4 months than I've seen in the last 6 to 7 years in places like LinkedIn and Facebook and business conferences. It is the absolute most powerful platform that's out there. I mean, there's billionaires and people from all different walks of life, and everybody's on an even playing field on those stages. You can have a real conversation. Like I'm sitting in a room with the dragons from the Dragon's Den. If you don't know what the Dragon's Den is, well, Shark Tank was based off of the Dragon's Den. The Dragon's Den was started in Japan, then to the UK, and then Canada. It's been around for like 13 to 16 seasons or something like that. Literally having conversations with Arlene Dickinson. I mean, I would never not have access. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have access with Brett Wilson and conversations with him because he's in Calgary here. But even then, I mean, it just was natural, and it's a beautiful space. So you can get it on Android, you can get it on iPhone, and it's a perfect place to explore and get advice into all sorts of different topics, whether it's business, spirituality, social marketing. There's people talking about artificial intelligence and quantum thinking and philosophy and music, and it is an infinitely beautiful space. It really is.
Thank you. And I know you're excited about it, and I know we've talked on there ourselves, you and I. So it is something new to explore and go out and play with.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Next week here, we should have fantasy football analyst Tyler Butcher. And of course, we are always out there looking for that bottle of Ron Burgundy's Great Odin's Raven Special Reserve Scotch. We're going to get that, and then we're going to go and we're going to try to chase down Will Ferrell and land him as a guest and discuss some of his great sports movies. So until next week, thank you for watching us. We are happy to have you here, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation and the Scotch.
Oh, thank you for the conversation.
And join Wild Canadian Rocky Mountain Hikers. You'll find them on Facebook. You'll find us just by doing a Google. See you guys.
Yes.
It's a show with Obi and his rocking hat. If this was the 90s, he would be all that. It's me, my Scotch and I, 'cause Obi is the guy. Obi is the guy.